They're loud, they're fast, and they can wake you up in the middle of the night.
It's all the time, nonstop, every day.
Tim Petty and his fiancée moved to Ringgold this year from Atlanta, a town with 3,400 residents and a lot of...
I think in having just that sound all night long, it not only impacts folks like us, but it impacts the whole community.
Petty lives about a half-mile away from the tracks and says the train horn is a nuisance in the middle of the night. So he took his concerns to the city council and asked them to create a quiet zone.
So what we propose is putting together kind of an interview and a poll, talk to some of the great citizens of the area and find out just where people like.
Federal regulations require trains to blare their horns every 15 to 20 seconds, 24 hours a day, when approaching certain crossings like this one in downtown Ringgold. A quiet zone, if approved by the town, would add barriers and signs for safety like this. And once a quiet zone is established, train horns no longer sound in that area except in emergencies. But Catoosa County school officials say that could create a hazard for our nation's most precious cargo.
We ask everyone on the bus for silence so that we can hear if the train is sounding as it comes up the tracks toward the crossing.
Catoosa County buses cross train tracks on multiple routes. Some buses cross them as many as 6 times a day.
The drivers are trained to not only look but listen for trains coming down the track. It's one of the most dangerous parts of our routes in our day because the train's so much bigger and heavier. We appreciate the trains sounding their horn.
Listening to the trains is part of the Georgia State Ride Protocol for school buses. We reached out to the Ringgold City Council about Tim's request for a quiet zone and the survey it requires. Councilwoman Rhonda Swaney told us in part, quote, "Our city manager had a hard time finding a company to do a survey, and when a company was found, the cost was not one the council felt could be justified at this time."
Part of that long-range vision for me is the noise pollution, and so I'll probably continue to fight it.
According to the Federal Railroad Administration, not all crossings provide the same level of safety. While quiet zones could improve quality of life, does it improve safety? I'll be breaking down the numbers coming up in my 2-part special report. Reporting in Ringgold, I'm Christy Calcagno. The federal train horn rule requires that be sounded in advance of all public highway rail crossings for at least 15 seconds. While it's a necessity for some,
We appreciate the trains sounding their horn.
It's a nuisance to others like Tim Petty,
It's all the time, nonstop, every day.
who asked Ringgold to create a quiet zone to help his family sleep at night. If passed, our region's first proposed quiet zone could silence train horns moving through downtown Ringgold. But the city says the cost to survey is too high and they aren't moving forward. But we wanted to know if the quiet zones actually work.
Every 3 hours in the U.S., a person or vehicle is hit by a train. Over 50% of those incidents are people going around lights and gates.
Railroad safety is the life and blood of Operation Lifesaver, an organization dedicated to increasing awareness.
And trains today are moving, as I said, much, much faster. They're much, much quieter, especially if you're standing in front of a train, that you are very unlikely to hear it.
According to the Federal Railroad Administration, many crashes involve vehicles trying to beat the train or pedestrians walking on the tracks. In the last decade, there have been 4 accidents in Catoosa County, 2 fatal. A stark reality for not only families and friends of loved ones who lost their lives, but for the train conductors who can't stop their 12,000-ton machine.
It just doesn't stop on a dime like your automobile. I'd say, Jody, it takes probably a good mile.
According to the FRA, 2 gate crossing barriers with lights reduced collisions by 88% compared to signs alone and reduces accidents by 93%. Median barriers reduce violations by 80%. When you add them together like a quiet zone does, the FRA says that they are very effective.
We have many, many near misses. We've hit some people down there. Actually, they've hit us. You have to be very, very cognizant of railroads and crossings.
But here's the catch. According to this Government Accountability Office report, quiet zones improve the quality of life with little to no safety improvement. In fact, the GAO found that the FRA primarily relied on public authorities to oversee the quiet zones that they govern and ensure that the compliance with regulations and informal inspections by the FRA.
You don't run red lights going down Macaulay. Sooner or later you will get hit, not to mention it's against the law. Same thing with any crossing. The red lights mean stop, just like a stoplight does.
In Ringgold, I'm Christy Calcagno reporting.